Hey everyone, today I'm going to be doing a book review on How to Grow Old, Ancient Wisdom for the Second Half of Life, originally written in 44 BCE or BC by Marcus Tullius Cicero, a Roman senator who lived at the time of Julius Caesar and then fled. He fled Rome once Caesar took over with the dictatorship. And this book is on the philosophy for how to grow old. So it's kind of a guidebook, not so much a guidebook, but it's sort of trying to come to grips with old age. And he outlines four kind of the common problems which people see about old age. Oh, and before I dissect those, I just want to say really briefly that this newer edition has it subtitled Ancient Wisdom for the Second Half of Life. And I think that's kind of really meaningful because despite the fact that this was written in 44 BCE, which is over, 2040 something, 50 something years ago, this wisdom is just still true today. It stands the test of time, and it really is ancient wisdom, but it's for the second half of life, no matter when your second half of life is. Even if, I'm going to be growing old in the late 21st century, but I think these are still valuable tips. Not that I necessarily agree with Cicero's conclusions, but just the fact that, it can kind of transcend time like that. It's really interesting to read the work of a senator who lived at the time of Julius Caesar in the Roman Republic and then Empire. Well, anyways, so he says in one part of it, he's outlining the problems that are commonly associated with growing old. When I think about old age, I can find 4 reasons why people consider it so miserable. First, because it takes us away from an active life. Second, because it weakens the body. Third, because it deprives us of almost all sensual pleasures. Fourth, because it is not far from death. And then for the remainder of the book, he kind of talks about those 4 different points. So the first one he talks about is because it takes us away from an active life. And he talks about how, with old age, you actually have a lot of experience and knowledge. So your mental capacities, with your mental capacities, you're still able to kind of have an active life as long as you stay healthy. And then in the second part, he says because it weakens the body, and he talks about sort of the same things. And I'm summarizing a lot. Like you really have to dig into this to get it all. But I don't really want to throw it all out there in the book review. But he talks about how the fact that your body is weakened isn't as much of a problem as one might think, especially if you're not really focused on, if you're not really living a life for bodily enjoyment anyway. And then the third ties into that somewhat because it deprives us of almost all sensual pleasures, which is mostly what he talks about is just sex. People can have sex, but he talks about how, sex drive goes down and it gets harder, partly because the body's weakened and things like that. And he kind of criticizes sex, and he kind of talks about how it's almost a good thing that you can, kind of focus on what him and other philosophers of his age and even of ancient Greece would call kind of the finer things in life, such as like knowledge and furthering the community and things like that. And it's funny, he quotes Sophocles, the Greek playwright of the Oedipus stories of all things. And I guess someone asked Sophocles how he felt about growing old and not, having as much sex. And he responded that he was glad to be rid of that old master because now he was free to pursue his, he wasn't all focused on sex and he was able to focus on his work. Which, I don't know how I feel about that, but it's an interesting little part of this essay here, which is definitely worth reading, especially if that's something that is really important to you and, when you grow old. And fourth, it says, because it is not far from death. And I think this is really what most people take away from Cicero. And out of the 3 things, this is really one of the most disturbing, I guess, things of growing old. And he says many things on death. I'm just going to say one quick quote. He says, for death, he says, either completely destroys the human soul, in which case it is negligible, or it takes a soul to a place where it can live forever, which makes it desirable. There is no third possibility. Why should I be afraid then, since after death I will be either not unhappy or happy? Which is kind of a very stoic way of looking things. And I know philosophers since then, including many contemporary philosophers, have come up, and psychologists, I believe, and some other fields, have come up with responses to this, saying, well, you're kind of missing out on parts of life, and it's more of a fear for not being able to see the lives of your loved ones and things like that. But I still think that despite those criticisms of this kind of stoic mindset, it's definitely worth looking into. Cicero's kind of stoic, showing no fear in the face of death. And he also talks about how we face death every day. It isn't until we grow old that we sort of talk about it a lot, even though it's a kind of an always present danger. And really quickly, while I have your attention talking about this, I want to point out what I would consider to be the companion to this. This is, a lot of people might disagree with me on this, but Seneca's On the Shortness of Life, which I haven't done a book review for, I might at some point, I think personally is a great companion to this. They're both Roman philosophers writing at somewhat the same time, I think a little bit apart. And I'd say this is like good for the first half of life, and this is good for the second half of life. And I would read both at both points. And On the Shortness of Life, which as I said, I'll do my own review on, it's really talking about living life to the fullest, not waiting until old age. And he says something along the lines of we live like immortals and all that we fear, and mortals and all that we don't fear. Wait, immortals and all that. Oh no, immortals and all that we desire, and mortals and all that we fear. So if we fear something, we're going to stay away from it. But if we desire something, we act like immortals and think, oh, I have all the time in the world. And of course, that's Seneca, not Cicero. I just wanted to throw that in there to let you know that I would definitely get these books together and read this one and then this one. They're definitely good, kind of bookshelf books to have for your life, I think. I mean, I haven't read, a ton of philosophy, but one other thing I wanted to point out. I don't know if this, so I don't know, I highly doubt it's Cicero's original mistake. It could be the mistake of this edition, which is by Princeton Press, or it could be a mistake of this particular copy of this edition from Princeton Press, which I received. A philosopher might say this one instance of this edition. But throughout this work, I actually haven't even read the whole thing because there's just blank pages. I just come across it. There's maybe six to 10, I'd say, just different points out in the book, just random blank pages where I miss out, and it's not, it's not a mistake like, it's just between chapters. I'm reading a paragraph, and then all of a sudden, it skips a page, and then the next page, it's like I missed something. So hopefully, I didn't miss out on too much of Cicero's wisdom by reading this edition or this instance of the flawed edition. So if you get this book, and it has the same thing, I'd appreciate to let other people know and myself in the comments section if it's the edition or just my particular instance of that edition. And if you see a comment below this video, or someone commented after I uploaded this video saying that it is this edition, then sorry, Princeton Press, but you might want to think about getting another edition that isn't Princeton Press. But it could just be the book that I have that has that mistake. But anyway, I'm going to say 3 out of 5 for How to Grow Old, Cicero's. But I think it's probably, I'm considering moving it up at 3 out of 5, just because I think it's one of the more practical books, philosophy books, which one could read. Like, this is a philosophy book I would recommend to like pretty much anyone in my life. Whereas some other philosophy books, even though I think they're, I rate them higher than this one, I think they're more worthwhile, they're a little more technical and kind of for people who are interested in philosophy, like technical philosophy. But this one, anyone can read this. It's just a great little book of wisdom. So thanks for watching.